Good evening, everyone. I'm David Elwood. I'm the Dean here at the Harvard Kennedy School. Welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum. Tonight we have a special speaker, President Alvaro Uribe of Colombia. Tonight's talk is the second in a series of forum events, which includes 3 world leaders in a very short time. Last night we hosted the Prime Minister of Kenya. Next Tuesday we will have the President of Indonesia. But tonight we have the President of Colombia, President Uribe. Before I turn it over to the President, I would like to thank some individuals for their fine work here and for who have helped make this evening possible. First, I'm going to mention a few of our dignitaries in the audience. I'm sure I will miss many. So, let's first welcome Luis Guillermo Plata, Colombia's Minister of Commerce. Where are you? Right here. The Honorable Carolina Blanca, the Colombian Ambassador to the United States. The Honorable Claudia Blum, the Colombian Ambassador to the United Nations. And there are many others. I'd also like to thank the sponsors for tonight. First, the Institute of Politics here at the Harvard Kennedy School, which runs our forum and puts together all of these events, and its director, Bill Purcell. I'd also like to thank the David Rockefeller Center for Latin American Studies and its director, Marilee Grindle. The Institute of Politics and the David Rockefeller Center have worked together to bring many leaders from Latin America here. Recently, we've had, for example, President Michelle Bachelet of Chile, President Felipe Calderón of Mexico, and world-renowned Mexican author Carlos Fuentes. Now, before I get started, I'd like to say a few words about the ground rules of the forum and freedom of speech here. This John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum is really the premier venue, not only here at Harvard, but one of the premier venues in the nation and even the world. And for almost 30 years, we've had presidents and prime ministers and scientists and generals and Nobel Prize winners and activists of all shape and form. And we have very, very simple ground rules. The first is anyone that speaks at this forum must take questions, free and unfettered questions from the audience. That is the rule. And in exchange for that, we grant our speakers the courtesy of being able to speak uninterrupted during their time. If you violate those rules and choose to interrupt the speaker in any way or whatever else, first of all, that's disruptive and unfair for the rest of us who'd like to hear the speaker. Obviously, it's unfair to the speaker. It's also somewhat dangerous in high-security events. So for all of these reasons, we ask that you please refrain from those issues and then use the question and answer period to ask whatever important or significant question is on your mind. So thank you again for this civility. It rarely happens that we have a problem here, and it's something we're very, very proud of here at the Kennedy School. So now I'd like to take this chance to welcome President Alvaro Uribe. Colombia, of course, is a beautiful country, and it has significant resources and reserves of natural resources. It's got a diverse and dynamic population and a solid economic base. But of course, in the past, it's also been marred by conflict and violence, sometimes a lethal mixture of politics and the drug trade. President Uribe has taken on these challenges and accomplished something rare in politics. His popularity remains very high, perhaps 70%, and by some measures even higher, even after nearly 8 years in office. Every American president looks on that with awe. It is a remarkable achievement. He was educated at the University of Antioquia at Oxford and here at Harvard, where he earned a degree in management at the Extension School. Indeed, one of the reasons for his being here today is to celebrate the Extension School's 100th anniversary. So congratulations to the Extension School, and again to you as one of its most prominent graduates. He has served in various administrative capacities throughout his life. He's devoted his life to public service. He's been the mayor of Medellin, his birthplace, and the departmental government of Antioquia. He's been a senator representing those areas and done a great deal. As governor, he cut the government workforce. He even cut the fleet of cars, and he put the savings into broadening the education system. As governor, he also improved infrastructure and sought to crack down on drug-related kidnapping. He was elected president in 2002 and again in 2006. In that very first campaign and in subsequent campaigns, his platforms have focused on security, dealing with the guerrilla movement, particularly the FARC, reducing administrative expenses, fighting corruption, and resolving critical economic and political problems. And his work has focused on these issues. Military and police spending have been increased. The FARC has been driven back largely out of the cities. And in recent years, the administration also has worked to disband the paramilitary organizations, which often fought against the FARC and similar groups, but were also accused of close connections to the government and serious human rights violations. And violence in Colombia's cities has decreased significantly. Many hostages taken by both groups have been released, including one very dramatic one recently. And the Colombian economy has been strong and growing at a healthy pace throughout the president's presidency. And again, throughout this entire presidency, his popularity has remained consistently high. And just this past January, he received the United States, one of the United States' highest honors, U.S. Presidential Medal of Freedom from President George Bush. Obviously, many challenges remain for Colombia. The recession has slowed the economy there, as in virtually every country around the world. Some violence continues, and there remain the long-standing issues of corruption and other challenges that all governments are now facing. And of course, there's another big question on the minds of a number of people here, and certainly many Colombians, and that is whether President Uribe will have the authority and whether he will choose to run for a third term. Throughout all this, it is our pleasure to welcome the President of Colombia, President Alvaro Uribe.
Mr. David Elwood, Dean of the Harvard Kennedy School, Mrs. Mary Lee Grindle, Director of the David Rockefeller Center for Latin American Studies, Jackie O'Neill, University Marshall, Ambassador Barco, Minister Plata, Ambassador Bloom, students Viviana Taboada, Mrs. Alicia Arango, Chief of Staff in the Presidency, journalists. It is a great honor for my delegation and for me to be this evening with you. Thank you for this invitation. And I want to repeat my congratulations to the Harvard Extension School for this first centennial. You have done a very good job. I want to give you a short view about Latin America. My belief is that we are in the wrong discussion about left or right. This is an outdated debate, obsolete, impractical. Instead of that, now that every country in the region says that it rotates around the democratic rule, our vision is that instead of this division, we need to promote democratic values for our democracies to become the most modern in the world. We speak about 5 democratic standards: freedoms, security, social cohesion, independent institutions, and people participation. People participation is the most important requisite for any country to get transparency. Participation and transparency create confidence. Any solid democratic nation needs confidence. This is the outline of our thinking about Latin American countries. My country, Colombia. When I was presidential candidate in the year 2000, 2001, and I went to the universities, I used to ask the students, have you thought to leave Colombia? And many of them raised their hands. And I asked one second question, have you thought to leave Colombia forever without return ticket? And many more raised their hands. 4, we made the decision to choosing one word as the leading word for our campaign, as the leading word for our government, confidence. The leading word is to create confidence in our country. Upon 3 pillars: security with democratic values, with freedoms, security for all Colombians. Second pillar, the promotion of investment with social responsibility. It is very important for a country such as Colombia to overcome poverty, to create a better income distribution and social cohesion. Many of my fellow country citizens thought that the only way for our country to make progress in peace was through the widening of social coverages. But we had not the resources. Violence did not allow investment to prosper in Colombia. We saw that poverty reached 60%, unemployment 20%. All the social indicators were very bad. Therefore, we began to convince our fellow country citizens that we were in the need to make Colombia a safe country, that we were in the need to fight for security. And we have gone to many places in Colombia with security and at the same time with social cohesion, with better education, health, microlending, child nutrition, and other social tools. Today, when my colleagues and I have the opportunity to talk with our fellow country citizens, they request at the same time more police and more education, more army and more health, more security, more investment, and more social opportunities. We consider that for social cohesion, it is necessary to have security and to have investment. And in any democratic society, security and investment need validators to become sustainable in the long term. The validator of this policy is social cohesion. And of course, social cohesion with freedoms. I want to share with you some intangible achievements in security. Of course, Colombia had almost 4,000 cases of kidnapping per year. This year so far, we have suffered 102, especially in the rural, remote areas. We want 0 cases, but the trend has done well. When my government began, the rate of homicides per every 100,000 inhabitants was 66. Now it is 33. We are not happy. We need to take it down with much more speed. In the last years, terrorist groups have been unable to destroy municipalities. In a period of 2 years, they were able to destroy 200 municipalities. We need much more. We have accomplishments, but we have challenges, as you have stated, Mr. Dean. But at the same time, I want not to refer to numbers. I want to refer to some much more important facts, intangibles. A result of this policy, we have recovery to monopolies my country should have never lost. First, the monopoly to fight criminals. The word paramilitary was chosen in Colombia to name the private criminal gangs established to fight guerrillas. This administration has dismantled the paramilitary organization. Colombia has no longer criminal gangs with a proposal to fight other criminals. The government has recovered this monopoly. In the country today, you see narco-guerrillas and other narco-trafficking gangs. And we are, with all the determination, fighting all of them. The justice administration is totally independent in my country from the executive branch. In the justice administration, we have the Constitutional Court, the Supreme Court of Justice, the Council of State, the Council for the Judiciary, the General Comptroller, the Attorney General, the General Prosecutor, the Office for Registration, the Council for Elections. All these institutions make up what I call the justice and the control bodies. All are independent from the executive branch, and at the same time, everyone is independent of the others. Although the justice administration has been independent in my country, the terrorist groups, guerrillas and paramilitaries had displaced and replaced the justice administration in many places of the country. Our government, with the policy of democratic security, has recovered the monopoly for the justice administration. Colombia didn't pay attention to the victims, and the victims did not come to place their claims, their complaints, because they were afraid or they found it useless. Now the victims are confident. As a result of the application of our law of justice, peace, and reparation, now we have registered 240,000 victims, and our government has begun the process to repay them. I understand it is impossible to have total reparation, but any effort to repair fellow country citizens avoids new violence, eliminates possibilities of vengeance, of hatred. Decentralization. Colombia has advanced a lot in decentralization. This has been the task of many governments. But because of terrorism, decentralization was in the process of being abolished. My country has 32 governors, 1,102 mayors. All of them are elected by people direct vote. When our government began, Colombia had 400 mayors who could not stay in their cities. They could not fulfill their obligations. And in addition to that, the terrorists that threatened them intercept the budgets with corruption and rob big amounts of money of the decentralized budgets. Today, all mayors and all governors in Colombia are working, and they come from many diverse political origins. And our government, in the process to get governance, this minimum unity of nation, works with all of them, with all the respect for them. We have recovered the viability, the feasibility of decentralization in our country. It is very important to highlight this point. Colombia has suffered the biggest terrorist problem in the region. I want to make this comparison. In some peace processes in Central American countries, there were commitments and causes for the parties to make the decision to negotiate peace processes. One commitment, for instance, to give many more democratic opportunities. Colombia is a white democracy without restrictions. It is very important to be taken into consideration. In one of the Central American countries, guerrillas made the decision to negotiate because they got the guarantee from the government to give the people many more democratic opportunities. And at the same time, because they no longer receive money from Western European NGOs. The Colombian terrorist groups are very rich and, of course, self-sufficient because of the illicit business of drugs. You understand how difficult it is to fight these people. These people do not depend on the international community. They are wealthy criminals. And this has been a great obstacle for my country to gain peace. However, of this big problem, my government has confronted this challenge with political guarantees, with the total respect for civil rights, without martial legislation, with ordinary legislation. I want to highlight this before you. We have advanced in investment. Colombia today is one of the destinations of investment. Consider making big progress in the world. We have passed the investment rate from 12-14 to 25-28. This year, in the middle of this economic crisis, During the first quarter, we had 25% of investment rate. In the second quarter, 26.5. Foreign direct investment. Before our administration, Colombia moved into a range between 500 million, 1 billion, 0.5. During our administration, in the last years, the range has been between 6.5 billion and 10.6. This year, until September the 11th, Colombia got 5 billion, 680 million, 8.5% less than the year before in the same period. But when we compare with the world, we need to know that in the world, the foreign direct investment has dropped this year by 42%. In Colombia, 8.5%. In social investment, it has been very important to take social investment to our communities. At the same time, we have gone there with our institutional armed forces to provide people with security. The central point in social investment is what we call the revolution in education. We have passed from 78% coverage in basic education to almost 100%. We lag behind in many cities in infrastructure because coverage has gone far beyond the possibility of infrastructure. In middle education, we have passed from 57 to 78. Before, we graduated 440,000 students per year in high school. Now we graduate 650,000 students in high school. The rate of coverage for universities has passed from 22 to 35. We have passed from less than 1 million students, university students, to more than 1,700,000. At the same time, I want to say to you that Colombia is the leading country in the Latin American region in vocational training. The many Colombians who are this evening with us know SENA very well, National Service for Apprenticeship. Colombian employers pay 2 points of the payroll as a tax to funding this institution. And this institution is open to the public. This institution has passed from 1 million students in vocational training per year to 6 million. Now we are working to make English the second largest language in our country, to teach English massively. The goal for this institution by the end of this year is to complete 1 million students in English through internet. The vast majority of teachers are in San Andres, our island in the Caribbean. Our fellow country citizens who live there speak Spanish and English as well, and the two are their mother languages. Now we transmit by satellite, but at this moment we are in the process to install a submarine cable to convert San Andres into a great potential for IT. After Mexico, Colombia is the second country in the Latin American region to expose their students to international tests, and the second, after Mexico, in domestic tests for their students. The teachers in the public schools were appointed with political recommendations. Today, they are appointed on merits. We are in the process to advance in coverage and at the same time in quality. Recently, we enacted a new law to stimulate R&D in our country. 2,800,000 poorest families receive a subsidy from the government to guarantee the school attendance of their children. We are convinced that if the poor families in our country can complete all the cycle for students for studies for your children, our country will overcome poverty, and our country will create conditions for a better income distribution. We are working in health. When I see the debate here in the United States, I want you to make this comparison. Colombia, with 46 million people, has 41 million with health insurance. The biggest portion of the fee is paid month by month by the employers. Of course, we have problems. In many areas of the country, we need to improve the hospitals. We have two systems, one for the formal workers and the other for the informal workers. And the second one is less ambitious. In the coming future, my country has to spend more money to make the system for the poorest people equal than the system for the formal workers. We are working in microlending. We have a system that we call Bank of Opportunities. It is made up of all the banks, private and public, first and second floor. We coordinate the programs, the government supervises, and the government regulates. During our second term, we have provided microlending to 4,500,000 families. 1,200,000 for first time have received institutional microlending. Before, they were engaged in the black market of usury. One of our main goals is to give Colombians the possibility to exit the black market and to engage in the institutional bank of opportunities. When my government began, many people said, as my fellows who are in the streets have said this afternoon, Uribe paramilitar, Uribe fascista. This is the government that has recovered freedoms in Colombia, effective freedoms. Freedoms were restricted not because of the governments. Freedoms were restricted because of the advance of the terrorist groups. Before my administration, we had years when 15 journalists were killed in Colombia. In the recent years, we had 3 years without one single case. This year, unfortunately, we have suffered 3 cases. But we are fighting the hardest we can to give journalists all the effective freedom they need in our country. I have figures regarding the trade unionists, but I want not to make you fed up with statistics. I understand we need time for your questions. It is very important to consider this. We have fought terrorist groups with all the determination, but in accordance with the tradition of my country, we have been generous with those who have demobilized. During our administration, Colombia has received more than 51,000 members of the terrorist groups who have demobilized. And we have received them with all the generosity. We have been unable to stop displacement. There is a trend that shows a huge reduction, but we still have areas in which there are problems of internal displacement. We are working to create liaisons of confidence between the armed forces and the indigenous communities in the areas of the jungle where we need to go to cut the plantations of illicit drugs, and our armed forces are received with terrorists that fire against them. To protect the indigenous communities, we are creating the liaison. And in Sierra Nevada, Santa Marta, the highest peak in relation with the distance to the sea, we have advanced a lot in restoring confidence between the indigenous communities and the armed forces. Before our administration, the number of indigenous people assassinated year by year was much more higher than now. 164, 195. Last year we still had 66, but our proposal is the same, 0 cases, 0 cases. Secretary of State, Madame Hillary Clinton, asked me 2 months ago, Mr. President, you see that the policy you have implemented is irreversible? My answer was not. It is very fragile. We need to give continuity, to give this country the possibility for this kind of policy to continue. I remember that the last civil war declared in Colombia ended in the year 1902. The next year, Panama got its independence. Our country was very depressed, and we had years of peace until the middle of the 40s, when new expressions of violence began again. Since the middle of the 40s of the last century, Colombia has had many generations that have not enjoyed one single day of peace. Different kinds of violence. But I want to call your attention for your questions. And Mr. Dean, it is a great honor for me to be here. And of course, as your rules and my willingness, I am ready to receive the questions.
There are microphones located in 4 locations, right here, right up there, right over there, and right over there. You can just line up behind the microphones. We'll take you in order that are there. Now, let me explain the ground rules for questions here at the Kennedy School. A good question has three components. First, you identify yourself and your affiliation. Second, you have just one question and it's short. And third, a good question ends with a question mark. So with that, let me start right here.
Could I make groups?
Can you what?
Make groups of questions. Not to give answer one by one.
Let's try, if you don't mind, can we do one by one at first and then do groups?
Yes.
So that more can do it? Okay, here we are. Thank you. First question.
Many thanks, Mr. President. First of all, congratulations for these accomplishments, many of which, of course, would not have been possible without your leadership. And my question is a short one. What will be your advice to the person who shall replace you as president in less than a year's time?
What? ¿Cómo es la pregunta? ¿Qué? Could you repeat your question, please?
Yes, I can. My question is, what will be on the basis of those accomplishments you have just presented upon us? What will be your advice to the person who shall replace you in less than a year's time? Thank you.
One by one.
Yeah, let's do one by one.
I remember that when I had the opportunity to come to Harvard University, and I didn't come here as young as you are. When I came, I was 38. Because when I thought that it was the right time for me to come, my father was killed. And later on, I was asked by many people in Colombia and in other countries, tell us about the relationship between the killing of your father and your political career. And my answer was, of course, I will die with the sadness of the killing of my father. But please take into consideration that 50% of the Colombian families have suffered this tragedy. For I have one goal: to liberate the new generations of this problem, of this nightmare. Many years of violence. It is difficult to overcome the problem in few years of government. Therefore, what we need is to give continuity to these policies. Dialectic continuity. I remember Professor Michael Porter at Harvard University, when he for first time spoke about competitiveness. And I remember that he wrote, you need to define goals. You need to mark a path. You need to introduce adjustments, but within the path, without stopping the process and without abandoning the path. I cannot advise my successor. Advising successors has created problems in Colombia and here in the United States. I want to advise the voters like you. My advice for the voters is to give this policy the opportunity to continue in our country. Security with freedoms, investment with social responsibility, and social cohesion. And of course, what I can do is just to invite the voters. Thank you.
Right up here.
Thank you.
Please, I beg your pardon. Please ask the question slowly.
Of course.
Because I am not very good at listening. This is a virtue for politicians. but a limitation for singers.
Of course. My name is Jake Sloan. I'm a sophomore here at Harvard College. Mr. President, it is clear that you've been a great president and a great leader for Colombia over the past 7 years. However, the referendum that is pending to allow you to serve a third term as president could potentially open loopholes for future leaders to utilize to their advantage. Do you think that this referendum sets a dangerous precedent for future Colombian leaders, especially if one turns out to be as similar to Hugo Chavez?
I will not to speak about other presidents in the region, but I will speak to our values, and later on you will make a comparison. In Colombia, we believe in independent institutions. Of course, independent institutions does not mean to restrict deliberation. I believe in the combination of independent institutions and permanent debate. Deliberation is necessary in every democratic society. Second, we have independent Congress, independent justice administration, independent governors, independent mayors, independent bodies to control the budget, the administration, independent central bank, free media, totally free media. And I have all the respect for independent institutions, not only for our Constitution, but also, and much more, for my soul, for my democratic soul. Therefore, the problem is not with the institutions. Other value in our country. We believe in free private initiative. We believe in the advantages of the entrepreneurial spirit. Other countries disbelieve in this possibility. We don't believe in the creation of state monopolies at the expense of the freedom of private investors to make the Congress progress. For us, private investors, when they fulfill social responsibilities, constitute a very effective way for countries such as Colombia to overcome poverty and to create a better index of opportunities. We are not in the process to nationalize and to restrict the media. In Colombia, you find a media that enjoys all the freedom. For these are our main values. If I were asked, what are your two main goals for the economy? My answer would be markets. We need access to as many markets as we can. And at the same time, we need investment. There are countries that don't believe in markets. We produce a small amount of oil. For the other products we produce, we need markets and we need investors. We cannot sustain our country only with the shortage of possibilities in the state to make public investments. Therefore, these are main principles of our administration for you to make the comparison. The referendum, it has the origin in the public opinion. 4.5 million Colombians have put their signatures. It has been passed in Congress. Now, it depends first on the Constitutional Court and second on the people's decision by voting. My own destiny does not depend on me. It depends on the Constitutional Court, on the people, and on my God. Of course, I consider that it is much better for my country to have many leaders committed with the general principles we are fighting for. But at the same time that I believe in a plural numbers of new leaders, we need to assume political responsibilities, because we have the right to host suspicious. Why? Because we have lived many, many years of weak governments. You will make the comparison, and you will, once you conclude the comparisons, you will add to my answer. But I cannot, because I need to be firm and prudent. And I cannot, here and everywhere while I be president, I represent the dignity of my country. And I have to respect the dignity of my neighbors, of my fellow country citizens of other countries. For I need to speak about us, but I cannot make this comparison. You will make it.
Thank you.
Right up here.
Hola, my name is Mariana Mejia. Soy de Bogotá.
Slowly, Mariana, slowly.
I'm studying at the School of Public Health here at Harvard. And my question to you is, could you please address the recent allegations of the falsos positivos, sorry, I don't know how to say that in English, and the illegal activities of El DAS, and whether you think these are somehow the collateral of the policy of democratic security?
We have restructured 427 state agencies. We have introduced many structural reforms. Reform in the transfer to the regions. A constitutional reform to abolish pension privileges. We have introduced reforms in the labor laws, in the tax code, under the leadership of Minister Plata. Minister Plata, he graduated from Harvard, from the Harvard Business School. He's the Minister of Trade, Industry, and Tourism. Under his leadership, Colombia has won for 3 consecutive years the positive mention of the World Bank as winner in the table of doing business, in the ranking of doing business. Year by year, we move forward with reforms. Now, we are in the process to reform this institution. Now, we have already enacted a new law for intelligence. And we are in the process to reform this institution. I cannot speak in general terms. Some people in this institution, for many, many years, have incurred in criminal activities. This institution has many good people and people who have incurred in criminality. This afternoon, I was asked at the Rockefeller Center about my political accountability for these wrongdoings in this institution. And my answer was, whoever knows my political background understands that I always put the cards on the table, that I fight with transparency, with arguments, not with tricks. I can give you the assurance that we will transform this institution. And of course, when you see wiretapping, the opposition says, this has been ordered by Uribe. And they enjoy all the freedom to say whatever they want against me. Many members of the radical opposition who has been radically opposed to me live overseas before my administration. Now they have returned to Colombia, and they live happy in Colombia. But they oppose to me, and I have to receive their opposition with a democratic feeling. But they know that I am a fighter with transparency, with arguments. At the beginning of this week, the media published in Colombia that there are evidences proving that some of these interceptions were made with orders of judges, of policemen. This is under investigation. I dislike that these cases take place in Colombia. I reject. But now there are evidences that begin to clarify the case. My government is not a tricky government. My government is a transparent fighter. I give you the assurance that this institution will be transformed, and one more assurance, that we push the hardest we can for this affair to be totally clarified. Now Colombians denounce. In the past, the huge numbers of crimes, people were tired, run out of force, of strength to denouncing. One advantage of this policy is that now Colombians feel free to make denunciations.
Right over here.
Okay. Good evening to you all. My name is Pedro Henrique. I'm a student here at the Kennedy School.
Slowly, please.
Okay.
You allow me what is called false positives against the public forces. In general, as institution, our armed forces are totally committed with human rights. There have been isolated cases that prove that some members of these institutions have violated human rights. We consider that the sustainability of the policy of democratic security depends on effectiveness and credibility. And credibility is a question of transparency, for we need effectiveness and human rights observance. We are working the hardest we can for Colombia to say 0 cases of human rights violations. Quite often, the Minister of Defense, the high-ranking officials of the military, of the police, and I, as President, we go on TV directly to take complaints of the people against our policy on security. Yesterday in New York, I had the opportunity to meet with the High Commissioner of the United Nations for Peace, for Human Rights, and she acknowledged that Colombia is making progress. But we are not satisfied. We want to have the possibility to say to you and to everybody in the world, Colombia has restored security without human rights violations.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Mr. President, in a country with such creative human capital as Colombia is...
Excuse me, slowly please.
Okay, again. In a country with such creative human capital as Colombia is, don't you believe there are any individuals qualified to continue and advance your good work? And don't you think that by doing that, you'll be strengthening democracy and setting out a good example in opposition for Chavez's responsible quest for perpetuation in power?
Where are you from?
Brazil.
Oh. Congratulations for your country.
Thank you.
I said to President Lula 3 weeks ago in Argentina, President Lula, please My friend President Lula, we need you to understand our agreement with the United States to increase cooperation for Colombia to defeat narco-terrorism, for Colombia to overcome this problem. And I said to him, President Lula, we need to pay attention because we are not only responsible for cultivations and for trafficking. Many people in our country are beginning to consume illicit drugs. My country, at the beginning, Colombia was considered a country for trafficking. After there appeared 5,000 hectares of cultivation, and we reached, in accordance with the report of our police, 400,000 hectares of cultivation. Regardless the efforts made by my predecessor and by my government, effort in spraying, in manual eradication, in legal activities for income replacement, we still have in between 80,000 and 90,000 hectares. We have suffered a lot. Brazil, fortunately, and I feel good envy. You have not suffered this problem. Colombia has many, many good people, but Colombia has had many, many good governments. However, Colombia, regardless having had many good governments, Colombia has suffered this problem since the middle of the 40s of the last century. You will understand the reason of my concern. Of course, for the future of my country, it is much better to have many, many leaders committed with these ideas, with these fundamental ideas. But we need to guarantee the electivity of these policies. You need good guys, good leaders, being capable and being electable.
Right here.
Good evening. My name is Deanne DeGramo.
Slowly, please.
I'm a senior at Harvard College. Thank you for being with us tonight. You mentioned decentralization, and I was wondering, what is your view of the relationship between decentralization and democracy?
Between?
Decentralization and democracy. And how can you ensure democratic local governments in areas that are unstable due to guerrillas?
In Colombia, we have political decentralization. We elect the governors, the mayors. The collection of taxes by the regions and by the towns has the slightest portion. However, they spend 52% of the total budget of the state, 52%. Why? Because there are constitutional rules to transfer to them X amount of money, year by year. And they are decentralized for education, for health, and for other aspects. They are the representatives of the national government to coordinate the armed forces in their territories. But Colombia, fortunately, and it is very positive for Colombia, Colombia has one single police, the federal, I call the national police. When I have spoken with President Calderón of Mexico, and I expressed my admiration for the determination he has to fight narco-terrorism, I have said to him that it is very important to have one single police, one single army. It has been very good for Colombia. In some degree, we have made progress because we have one single police that depends on the competences of the president. and the relationship between decentralization and democracy. The decentralized authorities are the closest to the people. People don't see the president quite often, but they can touch, reach the mayor every day. This is the closeness between the authority and the people is very important for any democratic nation. And the mayors and governors have the possibility to be in permanent contact with their people, what is very important for democracy.
So we are just about out of time, so Mr. President, let me honor your wish. Let us just take these three people, they ask a question, and then you have one final answer. How is that? All right, right here first.
Good evening. My name is Carmen, and I am a graduate student here at the Kennedy School. According to an article appearing in Colombian journal Cambio this morning, the flagship safety net program of your administration, called Agrosubsidio Seguro, which was intended to help farmers, has been used to transfer millions of dollars to wealthy families associated with your presidential campaign. Why did you allow this to happen, and what do you intend to do about it?
Question one. Next question right here. Doing three at once.
Hello, my name is Pedro Valencia. I'm from Cali, and I'm a PhD student at MIT. And the question that I have is, do you have any words of advice for scientists, doctors, engineers, entrepreneurs who are here in the United States confronted with a decision whether to go back to Colombia, and on what basis do you give this advice to us?
And this will be the last question.
President, I want to reiterate my gratitude for you for giving Colombia back to Colombians. And I had a question that was asked. I had a question that was asked by a couple of people, so I don't want to repeat it, but I have a letter to you, and in keeping with ending the question with a question mark, can I bring it up to you?
Of course.
Why don't you wait and we'll grab it afterwards. Thank you very much. All right.
All right, the first question. No, but I have been announced that I will have a meeting with some students who have written a letter for me later on, once the meeting finishes. Yes, I have no problem. I have no problem to receive the letter, to read the letter, and to discuss the letter with you. I have no problem. Ambassador Barco gives me the honor to receive the letter. The democratic spirit has to be proven every day. The first question. Yesterday, being in New York, when I was informed about the release, I called the current Minister of Agriculture and the former Minister of Agriculture. They said to me that they handle the assignment of the resources on the basis of merits. They call for competition every time they will assign, they distribute resources in accordance with this law. 3 years ago, after we closed negotiations with the United States on free trade, and the approval is pending in Congress, we promoted a new law to support the agriculture sector in Colombia. We call this law Agriculture Sure Income. Colombia has made a lot of progress in palm oil, in sugar cane, in many products. Colombia did not produce ethanol, and now is the second largest after Brazil. Colombia is the first largest in biodiesel from African oil palm. We are building many systems for irrigation in many places of the country. We have created a new structure to integrate small owners with big corporations to guarantee small owners the transfer of technology, the supply of funds, and the market for their products. I want to invite the former Minister of Agriculture to come here and to explain to you how my administration has handled the implementation of this law. They said to me that they have satisfactory responses. I have never said in my life, please assign the resource to that people. For instance, our policy of families in action that gives subsidies to 2,800,000 poorest families in Colombia, I never asked who voted for me and who didn't. We assign the resources with transparency. The Minister of Agriculture who assigned the resources is a PhD from California, very well educated, with moral values. He's very young. He's 35. And he's democratic debater. I am certain that he will dispel any doubt about the handling of this new law. Fortunately, Colombia has this law. Your question was about
Scientists and
scientists. Recently, we approved a new law to strengthen conciencias. The amount of money assigned by government in Colombia to R&D has not been a significant amount. But research in Colombia has been very productive. With small amounts of money, researchers have gotten excellent results. With the new law, we are much more optimistic. However, we have fiscal limitations, fiscal constraints at this moment because of the international crisis, and because Colombia has suffered fiscal deficit and a high rate of indebtedness. But I am optimistic that in the coming years you will see much more resources in Colombia, much more money for research. Minister Plata, within the structural reforms, has introduced tax incentives. For instance, special economic zones. When you install your enterprise within any special economic zone, the income corporate tax you pay is 15%. 15. The ordinary income corporate tariff is 33. You see the incentive. In addition to that, in the special economic zone, you don't pay tariffs and you don't pay value-added tax. Minister Plata, please, I want to create a relationship. Minister Plata, in coordination with the private sector, has found the worldwide economic sectors new in Colombia for our country to develop. They have included what is called medical tourism. Many people in the neighborhood go to Colombia looking for medical services. In the law for special economic zones, there exists the possibility to install clinics, hospitals, under the tax incentive of a special economic zone. In addition to that, Minister Plata, in coordination with the private sector, they have chosen other sectors: cosmetics, medicines. Colombia is a country with a great potential of natural resources. 52% of our territory is still in rainforest, and our main contribution to the world fight against the climate change is to preserve the jungle. For we already have completed 100 families who were engaged in illicit drugs, and now they work as forest guards. And we pay to every family $2,000 per year. And they work under the supervision of United Nations. Our rainforest, our natural resources, our biodiversity make Colombia a great potential for new medicines, for new cosmetics. Besides that, Minister Plata has chosen other sectors, biofuels, what is the version of much more value in call centers? Business process outsourcing. We are optimistic that with the new sector and with the modernization of the old sectors, Colombia will give much more opportunities to those wanting to go back to the country. One commitment of my government is to guarantee my fellow country citizens that in the future, whenever they want to go overseas, they go free. They have not got to go because they are expulsed of the country, because they have to flee the country. What are your fears? Are you a medical doctor?
I'm a chemical engineer. I'm a PhD student. But the thing is, I don't see the technology that we're developing here. I don't see it hasn't even started in Colombia. And I don't see the support of the government to PhD students.
Please calm down. Speak with Minister Plata. Speak with your colleague at Harvard University. I invite you to speak with Minister Plata. If you allow me, Mr. Dean, Minister Plata could give us a short briefing about the new sectors in our economy.
I think we're going to have to call it a day for your schedule, but people can speak with him afterwards, if that's all right.
Okay.
Thank you,
We
Mr.
have to
President.
fulfill the rules. You will speak with them, with Minister Plata, just in a few minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you for being with us this evening. Well done. Well done.
Who or you have not gone to Colombia? Please raise your hands. Your hands.
Raise your hands if you've not been in Colombia.
Now we want to invite all of you to visit Colombia and to enjoy Colombia. Remember what many people say, the only risk is wanting to stay. Thank you again.
Thank you again for being here, all of you, and have a safe journey to Colombia when you go and visit.